Alright, I'm back. Hey, what's up? I kind of said I was going to be making this type of stuff again, and I'm back. I did a Dandy's World video yesterday, I think is what it was. I don't know if the video is going to be out in time for that, so it might be 2 days from now. I don't know yet. We'll see how quickly I can, splotch everything together and make sure it looks good. But Pillar Chase updated a couple days ago. Might be half a week or a week by now. I think it's still a couple days though, and I want to talk about it because I've talked about Pillar Chase 2 before. I've talked about the game. I personally love the game. So I thought I should talk about it because I like spewing out my opinions and talking to people about this game. So this is going to be, again, very podcast style. I'm not scripting this one. I usually don't script my update videos. I save the scripting for very, big term overarching videos. I think that an update video doesn't really need many of that scripting aspects. So I'm going to do this very podcast style. I'm just going to talk about each thing kind of one by one, go over what I like, what I dislike, all that stuff, and then script everything together, and hopefully it sounds good. So if you like this stuff, let me know. I say that literally every time, so otherwise, I'm just going to hop into it. So, first things first, is the UI and menu update. So that was the big one I noticed, like literally immediately before I even hopped in the game, is everything has been overhauled in that aspect. So the entire UI is very clean. I really, really like the new UI actually. I like how it doesn't take up as much of the screen. I like how it looks a lot nicer, it feels a lot nicer, everything is pretty easy to understand on there. One thing I really like especially is the stamina counter in game. You have it both on the bottom left of your screen or wherever you have it. You have it there, but you also have it in the center of your screen. I think this is a great change because then you don't have to constantly be like looking down to see how much stamina you have. You can kind of just focus on what's going on around you and still know how much stamina you have. I think this is a wonderful change. I think this was something that was pretty necessary. So, this is a really helpful change. I like that, especially for Survivor. And then in terms of the menu, I also really like the menu. I think that based on what we've been seeing from kind of the dev updates and then how it was implemented in game when the update came out, I think it looks really good. It feels really good. I like how everything is just in one spot for Survivor, everything is in one spot for Monster. You don't have this constant menu of all the monsters, and then you have to like tab over to the survivors. Now you can just like, you pick your survivor, you have everything for Survivor right there. You pick monster, you have all the monsters lined out, and then when you pick a monster, you can see each thing for monster. I think that was really good. So, love the menu changes. The only thing I would say, and I don't know if this is just a me problem or not, but sometimes the chat can actually block the ability to exit out of the menus. So, like, if you want to look at a monster and then you want to exit out and look at a different monster, you have to, like, close chat first and then switch your monster and then open chat back up. So, if you're trying to talk to somebody and you have to like constantly tab in and out of the chat, it can be a little clunky there. But that would be my only thing I would say is kind of iffy, and that could just be a me problem. That literally could just be on me. So I don't know. But overall, other than that, like one very specific issue, I think it's great. I love the UI. I love the menu. I think it's really, really solid there. Another thing that came out is now you can choose, if you're the monster, what map you're going to be on. So you get three options for what maps you can play on, and you get to pick it. This goes for solo and double, so if you were going to be the monster on double anyways, you pick your monster, but then you also pick the map. So regardless of solo or double, if you were going to be the monster, you get to pick the map. And also, it now implemented chance systems rather than you always are monster if you have the most points. Now you have a percentage based on the same requirements, right? So if you're doing tasks, if you're surviving more often, you'll have a higher chance quicker, but you're still on a chance system. That way, players who don't get those requirements done often still have a chance to be the monster at some point. I like this change as well. I think that this game needed a chance-based system. I think that while, yes, it did feel rewarding for constantly surviving and constantly getting your tasks done, I think it also is good to have this so that newer players or players who kind of get screwed over in certain aspects have the chance to still play as the monster. I know one common problem that the game kind of had was that you could be tunneled for a very long time. I've had this happen to me. When you get stuck with PCX and you tunnel out a survivor for like 2 minutes, but everyone else lives and you don't get the chance to play because you have 7 PCXs in your lobby and all of them tunnel each survivor down. It really sucks. So this system kind of makes it so that you at least might have a fighting chance. Of course, it's not guaranteed, but you at least have a chance to play the monster, especially if you're getting tunneled in situations like that. I think that was just necessary. I think that was very necessary for the game to hold. So I'm glad that that was kind of introduced to the game. Um, what I will say is kind of iffier for me is the map picking. So I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I don't know how I feel yet about it because on one hand, I do think it's nice that you aren't screwed based on what map you get, right? So if you're trying to diamond a certain character and you get a map that is god awful for you, you at least have the chance to pick the map now, whereas before you were kind of just locked in. Like, I don't know a single person who liked playing as Monster on mainland. I don't know anybody who liked it because I only know I won as Monster on that map one time. And the only reason I won on that map is because I was playing PCX when he was gigabusted. That's it. Otherwise, I would get like down to the last survivor maybe, but then there was just nothing you could do. So this change is really nice in that aspect. What I think is going to turn into a problem though, and this is what I'm kind of watching and seeing what happens, I don't think that every map is going to be picked nearly as much as others. And so I have a feeling we're going to get into a problem where it's just going to be the same few maps over and over again because the killer is going to pick the maps that are obviously better for them, right? You're going to see a lot more Fazbears. You're going to see a lot more Joy of Creation. You're going to see a lot more Pillar Drainage System, maps that are smaller or tighter. You're not going to see a lot of mainland anymore. You're not going to see a lot of my world anymore because I have a feeling that especially on certain characters, those maps just aren't good, right? So if they're not good for that monster, you're not going to see them. Whereas maps that are good for the monster are going to be played more often, like Fazbear's, which is insanely good for trap killers, right? Or like Aoni's Mansion, which is also insanely good. Even though they reverted back to the old map, which we'll get to, it's still really good for monsters. So I think that might turn into a problem, but I'm kind of watching and seeing how things play out. I'm that's my concern. My concern is that by adding map voting, we're going to start seeing maps that are just never picked anymore. So, not saying it's a bad thing yet, but I think that is something to watch out for going forward. Next, on the topic of maps, is there were new additions to the maps. So certain maps now have last man standing events. Like Fazbear's is now going to catch on fire if you're the last man standing. And like Gobble Run now has this like rainbow mode, which is pretty cool. I like these, but I do think they need a little bit of tuning, especially Fazbear's. One that I very vividly recall is I was playing as Nilo on Fazbear's Fright. I got to last man standing, and I straight up could not see the survivor because some of the areas are so densely packed with the fire effects that you straight up can't see, like, at all. It literally is so blinding at times. It's mainly like the middle hallways I've noticed, like to get really specific. It's like those two middle hallways. You just can't see in there as Monster. As Survivor, it's totally fine, but as Monster, you just can't see. Like, it's bad. So maybe toning down the effects a little bit would be nice, but other than that, I think it's really cool. I just think that it needs a little bit toned down in a certain aspect or two, namely the visual effects. I think the sound effects are fine. The visuals, though, holy. So, on top of that, also, a couple maps got tuned, so off the top of my head, Gobble Run is now smaller. I think this was necessary because playing Monster on Gobble Run is a chore, and playing Gobble Run as Survivor is also just really boring, so I'm glad that got fixed a little bit, so now that map's a little more manageable. Aoni got a full-on, like, revert back to the old state. The only difference is that the giant pit in the top floor is gone, so you can't drop down anymore. I don't know how I feel about that, just because the biggest problem, in my opinion, when it came to this map was that map control was insanely easy to do. and especially for trap killers. And it's already kind of falling back to that even on this old version. I like the old version of the map way more. Let me say that. I like the old version way more than what they did with the new version. But I think getting rid of that pit also removed a lot of counterplay, and also just that feeling of being trapped on one floor, which is now very present again. So is it awful? No. But it's another thing that you kind of just have to be aware of, and I think it's going to be a map that gets picked a lot as well, just for that sole fact that it's so easy to lock down. Like, playing a trap monster on Oni's Mansion is stupid easy, so take that what you will. Other thing is the timer changes, which I think is really nice. So if you don't know, last man standing, now if you're the last man standing and the timer was over a minute and 30, it's going to drop down to a minute and 30, and if it was under a minute, it now raises to a minute. So it's always in between a minute and a minute 30 if you're last man standing. I don't know why it took this long to get in the game. This is something that was like needed. This was needed in the game for a long time. Other asymmetrical horror games have done this for the longest time. I don't know why it took this long, but it took this long, and now it's in the game, so thank God. Thank God it's in the game. This has made Last Man Standing infinitely better on the Survivor side. I now feel like I actually have a chance on the Survivor side, whereas before I kind of just groaned and said, okay, whatever, cool, woohoo. Now it at least feels like you can try and kind of get away with it. So that was nice. Last thing, I totally skipped over the forest rework. Thank God this map is so much better now. It is still a little disorienting at first, I will say. Like, my first couple times playing the map weren't that great. However, oh my God, the rework is so much better. Like, yes, there are still a couple choke points, but I think that's intended to have a couple choke points so that, like, trap monsters still are viable on the map. But also, it's not literally pitch black. Like, you can see on this map. It's a miracle. It is a miracle and a half that you can actually see on the map now. Thank God. Like, even on my computer, and I would say I have a very good computer, and a computer that is brighter than other, like, in terms of gameplay, like, my screens and my computer make it brighter compared to other computers. It was still pitch black on the old map. And now I can at least see. So, hey, that's a bonus, thank God. So, yes, forest rework, massive dub. Otherwise, everything else is pretty good aside for, like, those two little nitpicks I got. Now we get to this part. Survivors got a huge overhaul with abilities and new mechanics. So this is what I would say is the biggest downside of the rework, and this might come as a very hot take. I know that a lot of people are enjoying the new abilities and enjoying the new survivor mechanics. I don't. I think that this is, I mean, I'm just going to say it, I think this is the worst thing they've done. So, first, let me just go through them one by one. The crouch and slide is totally unnecessary. I've heard a couple people say it already, but crouching and sliding is really pointless in this game. Crouching makes you slower, of course, but also quieter. One thing I also noticed is, at least from what I know, like what I saw the few times I used crouching, you don't gain stamina back while crouching. So why? Why is that a thing? I don't know, but it doesn't make sense. So it makes crouching even more useless, and then you also have to remember with the amount of order reading in the game, silent footsteps is kind of unnecessary. There's very few monsters who don't have access to aura reading, and crouching actually becomes useful on. But for the most part, you can see people at all times, so it doesn't actually help that much. So crouching is like totally useless, and then sliding is a little bit more useful, but it costs 30 stamina. Like, why? Why does it cost that much stamina? You can run the same distance in like 15 to 20 stamina. So why would I slide and basically waste 30 stamina? The other thing I've noticed is you can still get hit while sliding. Like, and it's honestly not that hard to hit people while sliding. So, like, it's not like you can use it as some cool evasive maneuver to dodge the killer's hitbox. It might work like 20% of the time, but the other 80% of the time, you're getting hit. and you just wasted stamina. You got hit for free. It's just no. It's just no. Sliding is equally pointless in my opinion, and I don't know why. Like, I think the only reason they added it was for a fun factor, but like, it's completely useless in actual gameplay, and I have not seen anybody use it, like, for a legitimate reason. So that kind of blows, and I don't know why it's in the game. On top of that, abilities. Oh my god, these abilities. So, the abilities are... The way they work is that you equip 2 at a time. You can choose what 2 you have, and you can purchase them in the menu on the survivor side. Some of them are active abilities where you have to press a keybind to use them. Others are just constantly active. And first off, most of the abilities just straight up suck. Even playing... I've played like over half of them now. Like a couple games, I would say, for each one. And I would say like 80%... Yeah, we'll say 80. 80% of the upgrades are just awful. Like, I have them pulled up on my side screen here, and they're just god awful. Like, Energy Burst is pointless, because all you have to do to counter it is just tunnel them down. Because if you don't know, after your speed boost, you then reduce in speed for a few seconds. So you get this cool speed boost, but then you get slower. So all the killer has to do is just constantly keep a track of you and tunnel you down, and for a few seconds you're even more vulnerable than before. Like, why would you use this when you can just sprint normally and 9 times out of 10 evade the killer that way? Another one that I noticed right away that was like god awful is Cloaked. Cloaked is supposed to make you totally invisible, but you can only walk. Here's the problem with that. Just because you're invisible doesn't mean you can't be seen by Aura reading. Why? Why is this a thing? You can't even use this for the main purpose. Like, multiple times I will use this, and they have said in chat that, hey, I still saw you when you used that. Like, oh, that's cool. Awesome. So, the main purpose of Cloaked is totally counterable through cooldowns. Great. That's awesome. Woohoo. It's useless. Parry. Oh my god, parry is so useless. Even when I got it to successfully work, or saw someone else got it working successfully, and they pushed back the monster, it did nothing. And then if they failed it, you just get, like, 2-tapped. Great. That's so fun. So, parry sucks. Like, a lot. I don't know why you would ever use that one. And then, like, there's also the passive abilities, and these ones also just, they're very mid at best and useless at worst. Like, there's one that lets you see further, but only if you have max stamina. Like, how often are you gonna have max stamina? Let's be honest, probably not that often. Or, like, one that lets you gain a speed boost when you get a broken bone. Dude, you're already dead if you have a broken bone. Like, every time I get a broken bone, within 30 seconds, the killer will probably kill me. Like, 90% of the time. Because, like, as a monster, why are you gonna leave someone at broken bone? You might as well just finish them off. So, that is also totally useless. Or, like, the super slider. Again, why? Yeah, you get more slide distance, but you also lose more stamina, which is kind of your most vital mechanic in the game. Why are you going to use it? There's no point. And this kind of leads me to one of my biggest problems with this, and why I say this is a very poor implementation of a mechanic to the game. This game, this asymmetrical horror game, which if you go on their menu, like if you go on Roblox, you click on Pillar Chase, they state they are a horror game. Okay? That's why I'm saying this. This update no longer makes the game feel like a horror game. Compared to any, like, before this update, I would say this was one of the best games in the asymmetrical horror scene, for the sole reason that it was one of the only games that actually felt like a realistic styled asymmetrical horror game that actually worked, right? Not basing on, like, the retro Roblox, because a lot of games like Forsaken or Die of Death or, like, any other game like that, They focus more on the retro Roblox side of things, which is totally cool. I love those games that I just mentioned, but Pillar Chase stood out because it was a lot more realistic in terms of its environments, in terms of its gameplay loop. You weren't like having these constant like skills and abilities to fight back against the killer and knock him down. You didn't have all these stuns, you didn't have all these like survivor kits and stuff like that. You were just a dude or a girl or whatever you wanted to be. That's what you were. You were just a survivor, and you had one job, and that was to survive, right? Were there upgrades in the game? Yes. But their impacts weren't that prevalent, except for like very rare cases. There was like one or two that I know a lot of people had issues with, like Runner, because of that extra 10 stamina. It was actually pretty detrimental. Or like Flimsy giving you like 40 stamina. All that stuff, like that I understood was kind of a problem. But the problem with this new update is that it totally, at least in my opinion, it totally goes against what made Pillar Chase appealing to me. To me, Pillar Chase was really good because it actually leaned into realistic horror and grounded horror, right? You were just Joe Schmo. You had to survive, you had to run away, and you did have items, you did have upgrades that could help you survive and run away and live. You could do the objectives to reduce that timer, but at the end of the day, you constantly felt like a pawn, a survivor, right? Now it doesn't feel like that anymore. Like, it's in the same environments, it's in the same settings, but all these new skills and abilities and stuff, it no longer really feels like I'm a survivor. It feels like now I'm more of this like sentinel with kits that allow me to just totally throw the killer for a loop or the monster for a loop. And I don't like that. I really don't like that. So obviously, I'm not saying get rid of upgrades altogether. I don't want that to happen because I do think this is something that isn't going to go away. And I'm going to have to cope with the fact that upgrades are going to be around. But what I would like to say is that the game I think the game needs to decide right now, and the developers need to decide right now, are you going to be a horror game or are you going to be a party game? Because right now it feels like they're no longer a horror game. Now it feels like they want to be this kind of cheesy party game with some horror elements through its designs and environments. Whereas before this update, I would say it was actually a grounded, semi realistic horror game based on old creepypastas given a fresh coat of paint, and a really good fresh coat of paint at that. I can't say the same anymore. I think that now what we're looking at is a kind of cheesy party game with abilities that makes monsters run a loop and run amok. And yes, you're still giving these cool monsters these fresh coats of paint and these new designs, but it no longer feels scary because now you have these tools constantly under your belt to just get rid of them, right? And so now it kind of feels. I kind of want to bring it up to like Dead by Daylight, where Dead by Daylight also used to be a horror game, and now it just feels like this competitive party game with some horror elements. I feel like Pillar Chase is kind of starting to lean in that direction, and I fear that because I've seen what happens when games do that. I've been in the Dead by Daylight community for years now, and I've seen what happens when games shift from horror to party games. And I'm just going to say it now, usually it doesn't end well. And I don't want Pillar Chase to fall into that trap. So that's why I have a problem with the upgrades. Because this is kind of the first step towards something that is going to be a lot more party and like fun thriller oriented. Whereas the game before, I would personally say, was very horror grounded. It no longer feels like it is grounded in these horror roots. So that might be a totally hot take, and if so, I'm ready to defend that hill. I'm fully ready to fight or debate it. I'm gonna do it respectfully, of course, because I want to be respectful about this. And again, I want this game to succeed because I love this game, but I do think they need to make the decision now. Are they going to stay a horror game or are they going to slowly turn into just a fun round-based party game? Because if they want to be a fun-based party game, then great, go for it. Like, I will still be there. But I will say, I think you're going to lose a lot of people the more you lean into that. Because a lot of people fell in love in this game for its grounded horror and the way that it took these, silly, cheesy creepypastas and actually made them kind of spooky and kind of interesting. So, I think they need to make that distinction now. Before they do anything further with the upgrades, before they keep going down this rabbit hole, I think they need to make that distinction now. Because I personally fear where it's going to go. With that being said, I'll stop talking about that. The last thing I kind of want to go into is monsters and, their stuff. So, I'm going to briefly run down all the monster changes. So, Rosemary's stamina got changed. I think that was good. I think she was a little oppressive. Forest King rework, I think, is amazing. I'm kind of sad that the sliding had to go, because I think the sliding was really fun, but, everything else about the Forest King kit was really fun. I think that he is definitely a lot more in line with the, creepypasta game that it was based off of, Coronation Day. I think that it fits the idea of Coronation Day a lot more now than the old design, which was, while still somewhat fitting, just not really that great. I think now it actually feels like it fits well. So, Forest King rework, I love it. I'm glad to see that it's really fun too, on both sides. It's not just fun on the monster side, but playing into Forest King is also pretty fun. So it's a very skillful matchup, and I like that. MX got changed, so now the POW hop is kind of two-dimensional, but the charge can now turn. I don't know why they changed it, to be honest. I don't know. It's not bad. Don't get me wrong. It's not bad. I just think it's still a little weird. And, I'm still getting used to it. It's a little clunky, personally, but I'm getting better at it as I play. So, I think it's a fine change. I just think it's kind of weird. I don't know why they did it, but whatever. Also, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard someone say that the actual VA for MX is now in the game, voicing MX. And I did notice that the voice lines sounded different. I love them. I love the new voice lines, if they are new or if they were just re-recorded, whatever. I love them. I think they are way... I'm not going to say way better because I liked the old MX too, but I think they're, way cooler and they actually sound like MX, so huge props there as well. From there, we had just a couple minor ones like Aooni. I think Aooni got a speed buff, which was probably something Aooni needed. Jeff also got a speed buff, and I think Jeff needed that. EXE, again, kind of like MX. I don't know why EXE got a buff. I think EXE was already in a fine position, so EXE now gets stamina back while using their Too Slow ability, and also, I believe it's faster. I don't really know why they did that, but, I mean, it's fine. It does give them more chase potential, which was something that EXE was definitely lacking, mostly in Last Man Standing. So, that part does feel better, but I don't know why they really did both. I think just one of them would have been fine, just a speed buff or just a stamina buff would have been fine. Both is kind of overkill, but we'll see. Inkfell. So Inkfell got a couple buffs, mostly with Traversal, so now Traversal is a lot more quieter if nobody's around, and also I think the Blast is bigger, and I think you have more control over the Flight. I think those are the big ones. I think that Inkfell is a lot better. I think Inkfell is now officially my, most played monster in the game, and I do think Inkfell is better, but I don't think it's enough. I think Inkfell is still a very weak monster that is very map dependent. But I will say that at least now you have potential on more maps. I will say that it was a good change. I just think that Inkfell needs a little bit more in order to be more in line with some of the other monsters in the game. I've been saying this, literally Inkfell just needs a speed buff. I don't think you need to change any of the abilities anymore. I think the abilities are fine. Inkfell just needs a speed buff. 1 point of speed would be super helpful. Few more others just to race through them real quick. Nilo got some changes. Nilo feels good now. You can actually kind of catch up to the survivors more often. Stricken felt really unnecessary. I don't know why they made Stricken's infection better. It was just weird. I don't know why they did that, but I mean, it's fine. I'm a little worried just because I think Stricken was already pretty good in my opinion, but whatever, cool. Samsonite, oh my, who were they cooking with Samsonite? I do not know. Samsonite was like insane. There were some people just slaughtering lobbies with Samsonite, so that one I'm kind of keeping an eye on. I'm not going to put my 2 cents on it just because I think I don't play enough Samsonite to really comment on it, but like, whoa, that was a change. Lastly, PCX now drains stamina again, and also drains stamina for just your basic swipe. Thank God. Like, I think that it's not gonna fully fix PCX. I think there's some other glaring issues with PCX, but I think this is a good starting point. Just bringing back the skill expression through the stamina loss was, I don't know why they got rid of it. I'm so glad it's back though. I've also noticed that, at least in my lobbies, PCX is a lot more absent now, which thank God. So hopefully PCX just kind of stays that way, because I don't like PCX. I hate PCX. If you've seen my old videos, you know this. Anyways, that's kind of all the changes to the monsters. I think they were kind of just like, for the most part, so-so. The only one I was really big on was the Forest King rework, which was great, and the Inkfell one, which I think just Inkfell needs more. Other than that, though, most of the others are just like, they're there. They're cool. Lastly, I want to talk about skins and the recoloring system. I love the recoloring system, so not all of the ancients, but like a lot of the ancient skins can now be recolored. I think this is a great addition because it brings a lot more interesting customization to the game, and ancients now actually feel like they're a tier above legendaries. I like that a lot, so I'm glad to see that they did that. I've had a lot of fun recoloring some of my characters, some just to make them fun and some to like give them a little bit more of a spooky factor. So I think that was a great addition, and I'm glad that was just a cute little mechanic. It's totally unnecessary, but like, hey, I'm having total fun with it. New skins. There are a couple new skins. The only one I've seen a lot is the new Twilight Springtrap from the collaboration with Dogwatching 3. That one's really cool. I do like that one a lot, but the other skins are just kind of forgettable. Like, I haven't seen the Jeff ones more than once, so maybe it's just because I haven't been getting many Jeff players, but like, I don't see that one at all. And there's a couple others, they're just forgettable. I'm gonna be totally honest with you. A lot of them are just really forgettable, so kind of sucks, but oh well. Last thing I also want to mention is the Robux shop got updated, and the system in place actually looks like it could be a system where the skins could update over time rather than only updating once an update. And I think that would be great. I really hope they do something like that. Having the ability to just like rotate what skins are in the Robux shop like every other week or something like that, or every week. I think that would be a lot better just because it would make it a lot more interesting. So hopefully this is kind of their first step towards that kind of system. I don't know if that's what they're going for, or if they were just kind of like refreshing the shop so it looks a little cleaner. But either way, I do like the new shop. I like that you can actually see the skin and you can kind of see them based on tier and it just looks cleaner. But I hope this is kind of their gateway into rotating that a little bit more frequently. So overall, do I think this is a good update? Yes, I do think this is a great update, and the overhaul was very worth it. The monsters feel better, the survivors are questionable, but it is better. The map additions were great, the reworks were great, the UI is probably my favorite part of the update. I think it's a lot cleaner. Do I think there are concerns? Yes, and I think I've spent plenty of time talking about my concerns and what I am going to be looking out for going down the line. Does that mean I'm going to be leaving the game? No, I love this game. I love playing this game, and I will come back to it pretty frequently just to have some fun, like, when I can. But I do want to say that I am concerned about what it could look like going forward. I think that we will need to keep an eye on it going forward, and what I'm mostly curious about is how they're going to balance this new system, which is definitely going a different direction than what they are used to, right? I would say that the new survivor abilities aren't really horror-based anymore, And so my biggest question is, what do they want to see with the future of this game? Do they want to still be horror? Do they want to be grounded in horror? Or do they want to start shifting to something a little bit more friendly to people who aren't into horror and want it to be more of just a fun round-based type of party game with these creepypasta characters? Because I think that's what they're shifting towards. So either way, I'll be there. I love the game, and even though I do have these concerns, I think they can still pull it off. It's just a matter of how they pull it off. So overall, though, I'm going to give this update overall probably a 7.5 out of 10. So really good overall. There's just a couple pretty pressing concerns that I think need addressed at the very least. I don't even care if they go one way or the other, because like I said, I'll be there. I love this game. I'll be there. I want to see it happen. I just want to know where we're going. I want to know the future of this game, because I do think that that is a distinction that needs to be made. So, but overall, I hope you liked this video. I hope this was a good kind of podcast update video. If you want to talk about the game or what I've said, let me know. There's a comment section for a reason. I keep it open for a reason. Thanks for listening to all of this. I have one more video that I want to do sometime probably in the next 2 days, going over the Forsaken update. So be on the lookout for that. But otherwise, this is it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all later.